My name is Suveen and welcome to LinkedIn Live Talk Studio. I have my guest with me, Cecilia. So Cecilia is Executive Director and founder of CRTG Group, and she also works with children affected by terrorism. Cecilia, glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for the invite, Suveen.
Welcome. So, Cecilia, to begin with, I would love to know about the organization, that you have started recently, and what is it that it does? Could you tell us more about this?
Of course, with great pleasure. So the CRTG working group has originally emerged from the context of the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, that is a Congo committee to the United Nations. Therefore, between 2018 to 2019, we have functioned in that framework, and we have built on the role of this Congo Committee in supporting the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the Economic and Social Council, and United Nations member states in the areas of crime, terrorism prevention, and criminal justice. Now, the CRTG working group has been established primarily following the need to address violent extremism through tailored approaches, as well as to implement comprehensive strategies to prevent violence against children. We believe that a world in which the recruitment of children by terrorist groups is prevented, and in which every child who has been victimized by a terrorist actor would be able to in fact receive rehabilitation and reintegration support that is necessary for him or her to rebuild a dignified life.
Got it. I got it. Seems like a great work, Cecilia. I'm really, really happy to know. So, is this primarily what your organization does, or anything else related to when it comes to children welfare?
No, of course. So, in order to achieve our mission, that is essentially to protect children from terrorist trafficking, we conduct research and analysis, advisory, advocacy, and engagement. And we do so with an aim to equip policymakers, professionals, and practitioners with the tools that are necessary to understand and respond to violence against children in terrorism. And also in particular, we in CRTG reflect the existing shared international commitment to an effective, sustained and multilateral response to the issue of children recruited by terrorist actors. And we therefore found our work on the premise that comprehensive strategies to prevent violence against children consist of the effort of different state and non-state actors, including various professionals, civil society, and community-based organizations also.
Absolutely. So you're saying that you help both while prevention and intervention both. So you always
Yes.
ensure that you take all the right strategy and measures to ensure that in the first place children don't get into this, and once it has happened, unfortunately, you also come into intervention part as well.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. So I have this question. What are the top three factors, if I may ask you, that you personally believe after so much of the work experience, you keep traveling the world, as you mentioned in doing the conversation? What do you think? What are the top three factors that give birth to terrorism?
So I believe that it would be extremely difficult for us to list three main factors. And it is also important to emphasize in this respect that none of the potential pathways to violence should be considered, in fact, in isolations, because a multitude of factors is generally involved. And with this in mind, there are two main categories of drivers leading to terrorism and violent extremism that include primarily push and pull factors. Now, what are push factors? Push factors are intended as the conditions that are conducive to violent extremism and the structural context from which violent extremism emerge, including primarily the lack of economic opportunities, as well as marginalization, discrimination, violation of human rights abuses, or of the rule of law, as well as, of course, the prolonged armed conflict in a specific geographical areas. And secondarily, pull factors are intended as an individual particular motivations and processes, which may play a key role in transforming existing ideas and grievances into violent extremist action, and include in particular individual backgrounds and motivations, but also collective grievances, victimization that it comes or may come from a system of oppression, domination, or subjugation, or also foreign intervention. And in this category, we may also, of course, in particular list the distortion and misuse of religious beliefs as well as other political ideologies.
Absolutely, absolutely. You very rightly mentioned, and if I can rephrase, you gave me pull and push factors. So if I can say that you talk about the push factors are the factors that where they have to, they don't have a choice, but to be one. Pull factors are the ones where they feel attracted, or maybe, some of the external factors that not necessarily, it's not that they have to, maybe partly because they want to. Is this how you wanted to put it?
No, push factors, when we discuss about the structural element of it, refers to factors that are external to the individuals.
Exactly.
And then they're given by a particular environment. And the contrary, when we discuss pull factors, those are internal factors, if you want to understand it in that way, that are leading a particular individual to undertake terrorist violence or to be engaged in any role in terrorist violence.
Absolutely. So when it comes to, when this journey, when either is a push factors or pull factors, let's take it then. What happens? Did you ever have a chance to understand this? And how would you like to put in your own words? Is how much of children's mental health is impacted, when they are exposed to this extreme circumstances or extreme trainings. So, I'm sure they go through a very, very hard training. So, what would you say? How the mental health is impacted? Yeah.
Thank you very much for this question. It's an extremely important topic, and the answer to it is highly. In particular, children that are exploited by terrorist groups experience violence at multiple levels, and the gravity of such violence that is brought against them imposes devastating consequences. We know that the recruitment and use by terrorist actors often results in early death, or inflict extensive harm to the individual child, impairing long-term and also short-term personal, intellectual, social development, and it leaves, therefore, victims and survivors having to endure the consequences of profound physical and emotional scars.
Exactly.
Therefore, when we discuss the level of trauma that is experienced by children who are exploited in terrorism, it is often discussed about a pervasive trauma that is known not only to affect the brain functioning, but is also lead to the development of antisocial behaviors, including self-isolation, alienation, rage, and hostility, that it can be irreversible if left, in fact, untreated.
Okay. Uh, and is there? I mean, do you have, or have you known any other organization working in this area specific to when it comes to children who have gone through this kind of traumas or extremes? They're working in that areas. Do you think they're already organizations like this, especially to mental health, if you have known?
Well, the CRTG working group, one of its particularities is that we are the only non-profit organizations worldwide that is exclusively dedicated to protect the rights and well-being of children affected by terrorism. And therefore, in this sense, I feel that we have an enormous responsibility of laying the groundwork for future steps to be undertook in order to protect the children who are victims of terrorist violence. However, of course, there are initiatives that are being conducted at international levels and also at the local levels, and they are both critical and substantial.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know people say that no, most of these extremists are severely depressed, right? What does your analysis says? Is that do you think they are actually severely depressed? when they become extremists?
I do not personally believe that it would be possible to assume that every or most extremist would be depressed. However, it is true what you say that there is a public perception that mental illness and violence are intertwined, and this happens primarily because mental illness as a concept is often conflated with the idea of dangerousness. One culturally prevalent answer is that the decisive driving or the pushing agent for an individual to perpetrate acts of terrorism is in fact pathology. However, this is a theory that it was originally elaborated in terrorism studies in the late 60s, that it was a period during which pathology was also commonly conceived as a psychological abnormality or an affliction affecting the individual. However, this argument lost progressively consensus starting already by the 1980s. And so, in my opinion, whether there may be a co-causation between an individual mental health and terrorism, this is certainly likely to differ from case to case, depending in particular from what it is an individual diagnosis, his or her prior experiences, as well as other stresses or vulnerabilities.
Absolutely. So I'll be very interested knowing, and I would want the audience to know is, are there certain set of tactics that these people use, while recruiting children? Because, think about it. So children are just like, they're part of the family. They're most loved by their parents. So what are the certain tactics that they use to convince the parents or convince their loved ones to give away their children? Or do you think how it happens? What are the recruitment tactics?
Yes, of course. So, well, the primary mean is forced recruitment that occur primarily through abduction or coercion or other form of threats, as the one you're mentioning that may be posed against parents or caregivers. And the secondary one is voluntary recruitment. Now, with respect to the latter, a series of combined push and pull factors may lead to a child decision to join a terrorist group. And in particular, grievances, repression, and discrimination play a substantive role here, and together as well to poverty, lack of education, employment opportunities, but also, and most specifically, the provision of food, or also the sense of belonging and identity that a child may be on the outlook for.
Gotcha. So primarily, so you mentioned it can be either forced or voluntarily, and you can certainly give the reason that push and pull factor can definitely be a part of it. And these, these recruiters, they already know how to exploit the need, either a push or pull factors, and then this, becomes a certain strategy, one of the strategies where they do that. Okay.
Absolutely.
From your understanding, what percentage do you think is really, really high? Voluntarily, or do you think forced?
Oh, well, those are statistics that are unfortunately, I believe, incalculable, primarily because it exists a paucity of data with respect to children in armed conflict, and also because it exists a lack of studies about these issues in particular.
Absolutely. Yes. So I was wondering that, it's very, very hard to calculate all these areas. So if I ask the question, which possibly you think would be higher in percentage, and it's very, very hard to do that. But whatever little data we have available, either in public domain or maybe, the organizations, like you are running and the other people are, how possibly they get the data they have access to? Isn't it very hard for them to get access to the data like this?
Well, of course, it's extremely hard, but we are, in the end of the day, able to compile statistics that reflect a phenomena, this phenomena as it occurs in a particular region or also on a global scale. But generally speaking, we always talk about the thousands.
Absolutely. Cecilia, it's very, very interesting, as we are talking about. It's very interesting to know that, as you mentioned, you have been traveling to the world, you have been into this for a really, really long time. I would love to know, I had a chance to look at your background, and I would love to know what brought you to this humanitarian act, since when, and you want to share the story with the audience.
No, of course. Thank you so much, Suveen, for asking that. And you see, a lot of people along the course of my career have asked me the same, and why in particular I decide to take action against injustice. And very often I think that this question should rather be posed to those who proactively and deliberately continue to aliment architectures of oppressions also. And you see, in a world that is compounded by horrific levels of barbarity, I believe that standing up against it is primarily an act of humanity. And there are hundreds of thousands of brave men and women who decide to dedicate their life to fight against abuses because they believe that a difference can be made and that a different future is possible. And while returning to your questions, me, myself, doing this job, I am simply living in my truth. That is that children who are exploited by terrorist actors deserve an opportunities, and this is what I'm dedicating my efforts towards.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. It's really nice to know, Cecilia. So, okay, before I think I had a lot of information from you, and would love to call you for, because, as a psychology enthusiast, would love to have your opinion again on the other topic that we have, because of the kind of experience that you carry with you is really, really valuable for a lot of people, because I always believe it's not the information that matters, it's insight. And the only person who can tell you the insight who has been there, done that. So it's really, really nice. Last question that I would ask about your, organization, you being the executive director of CRTG group. What sort of support and help you think the other people, regular people and general people I'm talking about, they can look forward from your organization, they can reach out to you? What is it, and how does it connect to the general people? Does it, if it does?
Yes, of course. Well, primarily by assessing information, but also by assessing the unique level of expertise that the CRTG working group is formed by. And we in particular, as I was mentioning before, really believe that this is an effort that requires the support of multi-sectorial capacity. And so we have a group of people who are committed to put their expertise at the service of these children.
Exactly. All right. All right. Wonderful, Cecilia. So it was great having you here. Thank you so much for coming. And this, I would say, short notice, because generally we inform people in really very, very advanced. But thank you for coming. Would love to have you here soon. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
No, of course. Thanks to you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.